I was once the definition of a devoted family man. My wife Sophia and our children Ellie and Max were everything to me. We built our life together brick by brick, full of laughter and love. Then came that rain-soaked Tuesday night, when a single phone call changed everything forever. When I called my parents to tell them about the funeral arrangements, my father responded with words that cut deeper than my grief. A month later, I sat alone at 3 caskets, while my family celebrated my brother Anthony turning 35. Before I share how my world collapsed and the justice that eventually came, let me know where you are watching from. Hit subscribe if you want to hear how I turned unimaginable grief into unexpected redemption. Before tragedy struck, I had what most would consider an enviable life. At 34, I had established myself as a respected architect with a prestigious firm in Boston. My career was thriving, but nothing compared to the joy I found in my family. Sophia and I met during our sophomore year of college. She was studying literature while I pursued architecture, and we connected instantly over our shared love of classic novels and obscure indie films. After dating for 3 years, we married in a small ceremony by the ocean, surrounded by close friends and family. Sophia was everything I could have hoped for in a partner. She had this infectious laugh that could lighten even my darkest moods. Her compassion knew no bounds, whether she was helping a stranger or nurturing our children. She worked as a high school literature teacher, beloved by her students for making classic texts feel relevant and exciting. We complemented each other perfectly, her creativity balancing my analytical mind. Our daughter Ellie came 2 years into our marriage. From the beginning, she was her mother, in miniature, with the same expressive brown eyes and artistic soul. By 7, she had filled countless sketchbooks with drawings that showed remarkable talent for her age. She loved wearing mismatched socks and insisted on reading herself to sleep every night. Ellie was thoughtful beyond her years, often leaving little notes of encouragement in my briefcase before important meetings. Max joined our family 3 years later. Unlike his contemplative sister, Max was a hurricane of energy. At 4 years old, he never walked if he could run, never spoke if he could shout. His blonde curls were perpetually disheveled, his knees constantly scraped from his latest adventure. He was obsessed with dinosaurs and could recite facts about them that even I had to verify. His laugh was pure joy distilled into sound. We lived in a colonial-style home in a suburb outside Boston. Sophia had painted each room a different color, claiming that living in a white box would stifle creativity. Weekends were sacred family time, filled with trips to museums, hiking trails, or simply building elaborate pillow forts in the living room. We were not perfect, but we were perfectly happy in our imperfection. That April weekend, Sophia decided to take the kids to visit her parents at their lake house in New Hampshire. I was meant to join them, but a crisis with a major project kept me in Boston. It was the first family trip I had ever missed, and I promised to make it up to them when they returned. As they pulled out of the driveway, Max pressed his dinosaur toy against the window in farewell. Ellie had made me a card that read, "Do not open until you miss us." I opened it 20 minutes after they left. The call came at 11:17 p.m. on Sunday night. The highway patrol officer spoke in that carefully measured tone they must teach at the academy. A drunk driver had crossed the median on the interstate. The impact was head-on at high speed. They died instantly, all 3 of them. The officer kept talking something about identifying bodies and personal effects, but his words became distant noise as my world imploded. I do not remember much of the next 48 hours. Somehow, I found myself at a funeral home picking out caskets. 3 caskets, 1 for my wife, 1 for my daughter, 1 for my son. The funeral director spoke softly about options, and I nodded without really hearing. I chose white for the children. Sophia would have wanted blue, the color of the ocean she loved. Alone in our suddenly cavernous house, surrounded by toys that would never be played with again, and books that would never be finished, I finally broke. I screamed until my voice gave out. I smashed a vase that Sophia had bought on our honeymoon. Then I meticulously cleaned up every shard, horrified at what I had done to her cherished possession. Growing up, I had always felt like the understudy in my own family. My brother Anthony was 3 years younger, but he might as well have been the crown prince. His academic achievements, athletic prowess, and charismatic personality made him the natural center of attention. My parents, particularly my father, built their world around him. When I made honor roll, it was expected. When Anthony did, we went out for a special dinner. When I graduated with honors from MIT, my father missed the ceremony for Anthony's basketball tournament. I had long ago accepted my place in the family hierarchy and had built my own family where I was valued. Sophia and the kids had filled that void of belonging that had followed me since childhood. When the funeral arrangements were finalized for Thursday, I made the call I was dreading. My mother answered with her usual cheerfulness, clearly unaware of the catastrophe that had befallen her son. I struggled to form the words, each one feeling like broken glass in my throat. "Mom, there has been an accident," I finally managed. The silence on her end stretched for several seconds before she asked for details. As I explained what happened, her gasps and sobs provided the appropriate soundtrack to such news. Then my father came on the line. "The funeral is scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. I told him, my voice hollow. His response came without hesitation. "Thursday, Lorenzo. That is Anthony's birthday. We have had plans for months. Can you not reschedule it?" For a moment I thought I had misheard him. How could anyone ask to reschedule a funeral, let alone the funeral of their grandchildren? "Dad, Sophia, and the kids are dead," I repeated, wondering if he had somehow missed this crucial information. "I understand that, and it is terrible. But today is your brother's 35th birthday. We cannot come. Anthony has friends flying in from across the country. These plans have been in place for months." In the background, I could hear my mother, her silence now, a form of compliance. She did not contradict him or advocate for me. "My wife and children are dead," I said once more, as if repetition might penetrate whatever barrier stood between my father and human decency. "And I am sorry for your loss," he replied with the detached formality one might use with an acquaintance. "But we have commitments. Perhaps next weekend we could drive up to help you sort through things." I hung up without another word. What could possibly be said? The funeral was a blur of faces and platitudes. Sophia's parents, devastated by the triple loss, sat beside me in the front row. The chairs I had reserved for my parents and brother remained conspicuously empty. Colleagues, friends, and Sophia's students filled the chapel, but the absence of my own family created a void that everyone politely pretended not to notice. I placed Ellie's favorite sketchbook in her casket, along with the stuffed rabbit she had slept with since infancy. In Max's, I put his beloved dinosaur collection and the superhero cape he refused to take off even for baths. With Sophia, I included a first edition of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice that I had saved for years to give her on our 10th anniversary just 3 months away. At the cemetery, I stood alone after the other mourners had departed. 3 fresh graves in a row. The entirety of my joy and purpose buried beneath rectangular patches of disturbed earth. In that moment, I truly understood what it meant to be utterly alone. The weeks following the funeral passed in a fog of grief. I took an extended leave from my firm, unable to focus on designing buildings when the structure of my life had been completely demolished. Our house, once vibrant with life and noise, became an echoing museum of memories I could neither face nor escape. Precisely 23 days after the funeral, I received a text from Anthony. "Sorry about what happened. Hope you are doing okay." No call. No acknowledgement of his birthday taking precedence over his niece and nephew's funeral. Just 12 words of perfunctory sympathy sent between his vacation photos on social media. As the initial shock began to subside, a slow-burning anger took its place. I found myself looking through family albums, seeing patterns I had normalized my entire life. Photos of Anthony's achievements, prominently displayed while mine were relegated to albums. Birthday parties where he received lavish gifts while I got practical ones. Family vacations planned around his competitions or interests. At the recommendation of a colleague, I began seeing Dr. Winters, a therapist specializing in grief and family trauma. Our sessions were painful but illuminating. She helped me recognize the lifelong pattern of emotional neglect I had experienced and how it connected to my current isolation and grief. "You learned early that your needs came second," she observed during one session. So you created a family where your needs mattered, where you were essential and valued. And now that family is gone, and your original pattern of being dismissed is reasserting itself through your parents' behavior. The clarity hurt, but it also empowered me. I deserved better than what my family offered. Sophia had shown me that. My children had shown me that. 4 months after the accident, I made 2 decisions that would alter the trajectory of my life. First, I put our family home on the market. Every corner held memories that were both precious and unbearable. Second, I approached my firm about redirecting my architectural focus. Buildings had always been my passion, but now I felt drawn to creating spaces that could facilitate healing and commemoration. Around this same time, I received unexpected news from Sophia's family lawyer. Her parents had established substantial trust funds for both children with the provision that should anything happen to them, the funds would revert to Sophia and then to me. Additionally, Sophia's parents had named us in their will, wanting to ensure their only daughter and her family were secure. With both of them now gone, having died within weeks of each other after the accident, I inherited a substantial sum approaching $50 million. The money felt like a burden rather than a blessing. What good was financial security when everything that mattered was gone? Then, during a sleepless night, inspiration struck. I could honor Sophia and our children by helping others who faced similar tragedies. The next morning, I called a lawyer specializing in nonprofit organizations. Within weeks, the Sophia, Ellie, and Max Foundation was established with a mission to support families who had lost loved ones to drunk driving. The foundation would provide both immediate financial assistance and ongoing emotional support through specially designed memorial centers. 3 months after the funeral, my mother called for the first time. Her voice was casual, as if we had spoken recently. "We are planning Thanksgiving dinner and wanted to know if you will be joining us," she said. No acknowledgement of her absence at the funeral. No recognition of my grief or her failure as a mother. "No," I replied simply. "Lorenzo, you cannot isolate yourself forever. Family is important, especially during difficult times." The irony of her statement was so profound that I almost laughed. "I agree that family is important," I said. "That is why I will be spending Thanksgiving with Sophia's aunt, who calls me every week to check on me. Unlike my own family, who could not be bothered to attend the funeral of their grandchildren because of a birthday party. That is not fair," she protested. "Your father had made commitments. So had I, Mom, to Sophia, to our children, to love and protect them forever. Now all I can do is honor their memory, and I would rather do that with people who actually cared about them." I ended the call and blocked her number, along with my father's and Anthony's. The sense of liberation was immediate and surprising. As the foundation took shape, I found purpose again. I threw myself into designing the first memorial center, a place where grieving families could find resources, counseling, and community. The architectural challenge of creating a space that acknowledged grief while fostering healing gave me a reason to use my talents again. During this time, I reconnected with Maya, an old college friend who had attended the funeral. She had lost her husband to cancer years earlier and understood grief in a way few others in my life could. Her support was not intrusive or demanding just a steady presence that gradually became essential to my healing process. "Grief changes us," she told me one evening as we shared dinner. "The trick is directing that change rather than being dragged by it." Her words resonated deeply, validating the path I had chosen with the foundation. 6 months to the day after losing my family, I was working late at the foundation's temporary office when Maya called. "Lorenzo, have you seen the Forbes article?" she asked without preamble. "What article? They have done a feature on you and the foundation. It is already going viral." I quickly found the article online. "Architect of Grief, How One Man Turned Personal Tragedy into $50 Million Foundation." The piece detailed my personal loss and my decision to donate my entire inheritance to creating a nationwide network of memorial centers for victims of drunk driving. The first center, set to open the following month, was showcased with renderings of my design. The article praised the innovative approach of the centers, which would combine practical resources with thoughtfully designed spaces for reflection and healing. It also mentioned the Foundation's advocacy work for stricter drunk driving laws and victim compensation. Within hours of the article's publication, my phone began ringing with calls from numbers I had blocked months ago. First my mother, then my father, then Anthony. I ignored them all, but the calls persisted throughout the evening and into the next day. 2 days after the article appeared, there was a knock at my apartment door. When I opened it, Anthony stood in the hallway looking simultaneously arrogant and uncomfortable. "You have been ignoring our calls," he said, pushing past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. "Yes," I replied, simply closing the door, but remaining near it. Anthony paced my living room, taking in the sparse furnishings of my temporary home. "Nice article," he said finally. $50 million. That is quite a windfall. It is not a windfall. It is my wife's and children's future that can never happen. It is their lives monetized. He had the decency to look momentarily abashed before pressing on. "Look, Dad, and Mom wanted me to talk to you. They feel terrible about everything that happened." "Everything that happened," I repeated. "You mean my wife and children dying, or you all skipping their funeral for your birthday party?" "That is not fair," he protested, echoing our mother's words. "It was not just a birthday party. It was a whole event. People had flown in. My children were being buried," I said, my voice deadly calm. "Your niece and nephew. But please tell me more about your party guests and their inconvenient flight schedules." Anthony sighed dramatically, as if I were being unreasonable. "Look, what is done. We cannot change the past. But we are family, and families stick together. Is that what you call what happened? Sticking together, I am not here to argue," he said, his tone shifting to what I recognized as his business negotiation voice. "I am here because we need to talk about the money." And there it was, the real reason for his sudden appearance in my life. "The money is going to the Foundation," I said. "All of it." "But that is ridiculous. $50 million to strangers. What about your family?" "My family is dead." His face flushed with anger. "I am talking about your real family, Mom and Dad, me. The money came from Sophia's family. It was meant for her and our children. Since they cannot use it, I am honoring them by helping other families who have suffered similar losses." "You cannot be serious," Anthony scoffed. "Dad and Mom need that money. My business has been struggling, and they invested most of their retirement fund in it." The pieces suddenly fit together. My parents' sudden interest in reconnecting had nothing to do with reconciliation or regret. It was financial desperation driving their renewed interest in their surviving son. "So, let me understand this," I said slowly. "You convinced our parents to invest their retirement savings in your business ventures. Those ventures failed. Now you have all come looking for a bailout from me using money that belonged to the family you could not be bothered to mourn." It is not like that he protested, but his eyes shifted away from mine. "It is exactly like that," I replied. "And the answer is no. Not 1 cent. Anthony's desperation turned to anger. "You always were selfish. Just because your life took a bad turn does not mean you get to punish the rest of us. Blood is thicker than water, Lorenzo. You owe your family." Something in me snapped at his words. All the grief and rage I had carefully channeled into productive work for months came rushing to the surface. I owed my family everything, I said, my voice shaking. I owed Sophia and Ellie and Max every ounce of love and protection I could give them. And I failed them because I was not there when a drunk driver took their lives. The only thing I can do for them now is honor their memory. And as for blood being thicker than water, Anthony, you should know the full quote. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The family we choose is stronger than the family we are born into. You will regret this. He threatened, moving toward me with clenched fists. Get out of my home, I said, standing my ground, and do not come back. For a moment I thought he might actually strike me. Instead, he spat on my floor before storming out, slamming the door so hard that the pictures on my wall rattled. The next day, After Anthony made threatening calls to the foundation office, I filed for a restraining order. This action, combined with a reporter overhearing his scene at my apartment, led to a follow-up article about the family drama behind the foundation. Unexpectedly, public sympathy and support for the foundation grew, with donations pouring in from people moved by both the mission and the story behind it. Maya stood by me through this fresh turmoil, her quiet strength a counterpoint to my family's toxic demands. As we worked side by side to prepare for the first memorial center's opening, our friendship deepened into something neither of us had expected or sought, but which felt like a gift amid so much loss. 1 year after losing Sophia, Ellie, and Max, I stood at their graves with fresh flowers. The memorial service at the newly opened center had just concluded, bringing together foundation supporters, beneficiaries, and friends. As I knelt to arrange the bouquets, I sensed someone approach and looked up to see my mother standing uncertainly a few feet away. She had aged visibly in the past year, her hair grayer, her posture more stooped. For the first time in my memory, she stood without my father's dominating presence beside her. "May I join you?" she asked softly. I nodded, and she knelt awkwardly beside me, placing her own small bouquet at each grave. "They are beautiful markers," she said, indicating the headstones I had designed myself. "Thank you for coming," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "I should have been here a year ago," she replied, tears filling her eyes. "I have no excuse that matters. I failed you. I failed them." We sat in silence for several minutes, the admission hanging between us. "Your father and I separated 3 months ago," she finally said. "After everything that happened with Anthony and the money, I started seeing a therapist. She helped me see patterns I had been blind to for decades." I said nothing, letting her continue at her own pace. "I enabled his favoritism toward Anthony. I stood by while you were treated as less important, less worthy of attention and love. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but I was really just avoiding conflict at your expense." Her honesty was unexpected and stirring. "Why now?" I asked. "The foundation," she said simply. "Seeing what you built from your grief, it made me question what I have built from my own failures. I want to do better, Lorenzo. I do not expect forgiveness or even a relationship, if that is not what you want. But I needed you to know that I see you now. I see what I did and what I failed to do." I did not embrace her or offer instant forgiveness. Years of neglect and the ultimate betrayal of the funeral could not be erased by one conversation. But I did invite her to tour the memorial center, to see what her grandchildren's legacy had become. By then, 3 centers were operational across the country, with plans for 7 more. Each featured architectural elements inspired by Sophia, Ellie, and Max. Sophia's love of literature appeared in reading nooks filled with books on grief and healing. Ellie's artistic spirit informed the art therapy studios. Max's energy and passion for discovery shaped the children's areas where young siblings of victims could process their feelings through play and activity. My relationship with Maya had evolved gradually and respectfully, both of us mindful of the ghosts that accompanied us. She never tried to replace Sophia in my life, but created her own space that somehow existed alongside my grief rather than in opposition to it. The foundation had expanded beyond memorial centers to provide therapy for grieving families, financial support for funeral expenses, and legal advocacy for victims seeking justice. We had helped draft legislation strengthening penalties for drunk driving and increasing compensation for victims' families. 2 months after the cemetery meeting with my mother, my father requested to see me. Unlike my mother's humble approach, he arrived at my office with the same authoritative air he had always carried. "Your mother says you two have been talking," he began without preamble. "We have," I confirmed. "She seems to think I owe you an apology," he continued, his tone suggesting the very idea was absurd. "Do you think you do?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Families are complicated, Lorenzo. I did the best I could with 2 very different sons. Is that what you tell yourself? That choosing one child over the other repeatedly was just dealing with differences I never chose?" "Anthony, over you," he protested. "You chose his birthday party over my children's funeral," I replied calmly. "There is no clearer statement of priority than that." He had no response to this undeniable fact. "I did not come here to argue," he said finally. "I came because your mother thinks we should try to be a family again." "We are not a family," I said. "We are people connected by genetics, but not by love or respect or even basic decency." "So that is it. After one mistake, you write off 34 years. It was not one mistake. It was the culmination of a lifetime of choices that made it clear where I stood in your estimation. And it cost you a relationship with your son, your daughter-in-law, and your grandchildren. Now it has cost you a relationship with me." He left without further argument, and I felt no regret watching him go. The peace I had found came not from reconciliation, but from recognizing toxic patterns and choosing a different path. Maya's announcement that she was pregnant came unexpectedly, bringing a complex mixture of joy and renewed grief. The prospect of fatherhood again terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. Together we decided to embrace this new chapter while keeping Sophia, Ellie, and Max present in our lives and home. The foundation continued to grow, touching thousands of lives affected by similar tragedies. In their absence, my family had somehow become even more influential, their memory shaping policies, creating safe spaces, and bringing comfort to those walking the same dark path I had traveled. I learned that family is not defined by blood or obligation, but by who shows up when the world is falling apart. It is defined by those who hold space for our grief without trying to diminish it, by those who remember our loved ones' names and speak them often, by those who build rather than destroy. Has tragedy ever revealed who truly stands by you in your darkest moments? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit like and subscribe to support more stories of turning pain into purpose. Remember, sometimes family is not about who shares your DNA, but who shares your journey through grief and healing. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you always treasure those who truly show up for you when it matters most.